Welcome to Dual Boot Diaries. My name is Adam.
I'm Will.
And we are here to talk about Linux, specifically switching from Windows to Linux. Will, why are we talking about it?
Yeah, I like to think of 2025 as the year of Linux. You know, people have said that before. We invented it on the Full Nerd. We've been saying it for like 25 years now.
TM.
But for real though, Microsoft killing off a ton of old hardware with Windows 10 end of life later this year, and they've kind of pushed it back a little bit. And there's some kind of asterisks on that end of life now. But for all intents and purposes, Windows 10 and anything that doesn't have a TPM 2.0 module is going to stop working with modern versions of Windows and not get security updates after middle of October of 2025, which, you know, I think Microsoft and a lot of the hardware vendors would really like you to go out and buy new computers to replace all of those end-of-life computers.
Of course.
But we have, beginning kind of as a joke, but now it's becoming more real every day, suggested that people maybe try out one of the many various flavors of Linux for some of those older machines that aren't going to be supported anymore after October.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just us. I feel like there has been a groundswell of people, whether it's because of Windows 10 end of lifing or a lot of people getting used to SteamOS, being like, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of trying out Linux, and we're part of that group. And so we decided, why don't we start a podcast where we get together and talk about our experiences of switching from Windows as our main PCs to Linux. So yeah, the name Dual Boot Diaries is a reference to the fact that we'll still be dual booting. We're still going to be using Windows for certain things, but we're also going to do a large portion of our daily work, or try to, on Linux. And yeah. Well,
and at the same time, consumer Linux has become much more viable. Like the rise of gaming handhelds, the PC gaming handhelds like the Steam Deck and the new Lenovo Go's and stuff like that are Linux-based machines, means that having some basic proficiency in Linux is really useful when you have one of those machines and you're maintaining and you're running and you want to do weird stuff like put a bunch of old emulators on it, or you know, run the Epic Game Store instead of just Steam on it. And so building proficiency in that is valuable, even if we end up switching back to Windows full time at the end of this process.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole thing. So this is a short run podcast series. It is focusing on switching from Windows to Linux, and it running in a dual boot situation using Windows and Linux at the same time. There is an end date, because at some point we're going to be making a decision, both Will and I, of like, okay, do we delete the Linux partition or do we delete the Windows partition?
Should I stay?
That'll be the end.
Or should I go? You know, that's what we have to ask ourselves. So the other thing about it is we both are multiple computer users, right? Like we both use desktops, we both use laptops. For right now, I think we're going to start with laptops, just because those seem to be, frankly, a little easier than a big modern desktop in a lot of ways. And then we'll continue to add in new stuff as we go throughout this whole process. So that's kind of the basic high level. And yeah, and the thought is, like you said, I've never done a podcast before that had a use by date on it. But the idea is, at the end of this, we're going to decide Windows or Linux, you know, which lives, which dies. So
you have to pick a camp, you know, it's one or the other. But also I should state clearly, we are not experts. We are here sharing our experiences of learning Linux, all that kind of stuff. So the format of the podcasts going forward will be very much about either things that we've been talking about or doing or trying to set up in the previous week, or the things we're going to be working on, and talking about the things we're going to be working on in the next week. So the main chunk of it is going to fall into two categories like that.
Well, and because we're not experts, we want the podcast to reflect that. So a lot of the podcast is going to be about audience interaction. We want, we fully expect people. One of the things that my experience with Linux has taught me is that there are a million ways to do everything in Linux.
Yes.
Choice is always available at every path and turn. Everybody has opinions about what the right way and the wrong way is to do stuff. Some ways are more right or more wrong than others, it seems like. Yeah, and we want to have conversations about that stuff, because I think that one of the ways that you can understand this stuff more, both for us and for other people listening that may be Linux neophytes, is by talking about it, by talking through why some things are better, why some things are worse. I really am interested. Like, people who use Linux love to talk about Linux. It turns out if you are a hardcore Linux user, this podcast may not be for you. Like, this might be a screaming at the radio in your car podcast, because you'll be like, why on earth are you using Flatpak for that? That is a bad idea for Flatpak. I don't know, man.
Or maybe you just want to tell us the way we should be doing it and helping explaining it, right? So I think it can be for both the hardcore users and new people who are thinking of switching, like myself.
But yeah, so we're building that kind of interaction both for neophyte listeners and for expert listeners into the format. Like, we're going to start every show by talking about what we did last week, talking about what folks had suggestions on, what they thought we did well, what they thought we did poorly, and then, kind of report back on how things went. And then, like I said, I like to end this kind of podcast with some homework. Like, I like to say, hey, what's our plan for next week, so that people who are going on this trip with us, on this journey with us, can work on the same things that we're working on, so we all have the same experiences to share come the next week. And I hope that people will share that stuff as the week goes, so we can talk about it in the upcoming episodes as well. So
yeah, and it's not just going to be that. Those are going to be the majority of the episodes that we do, is kind of that format. But listen, I've had people reach out and be like, hey, I want to be a guest on the show, because either they're an expert in Linux land and we can ask them in real time, or they're actually going on this journey with us and they're in that same boat and they want to report on their findings. So we have some guests lined up. Maybe there'll be high level news items that we feel like we want to chime in on, even though we're not the experts, but it's still something to talk about, or just random high level topics that are just Linux adjacent, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. So that's the kind of high level overview. We'd love to hear what people think. You can either post in the comments on YouTube. I think we'll at some point have an email address set up for this. I don't know that we've done that yet. I guess the last thing is, why is this episode 0? And this is some podcast insider business, I guess.
Yeah,
but you have to have.
It's a little tactical, but it's also, I think, a good place to start to let people know of where we're coming from and laying the groundwork, because I can imagine that this podcast series doesn't have to be timely. It's something anybody can pick up from episode 0, a week, months, maybe even years later, and be like, oh, wow, I'm following the same kind of journey. So, I think we should take a moment to talk about our experiences with Linux so far, because even though we're not experts, we both kind of have a little bit of different experience with it. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so I've been dabbling with Linux off and on since the 90s. There was a Boot CD that Boot magazine had a CD that came with their issues every month, and I think they put Debian on the CD in 1997 at some point. And so I booted off of that thing and installed Debian on a second partition on my computer, and I never got the GUI to work. And then I removed that partition from my computer and didn't look back for a few years. But when I was an editor at Maximum PC in the early 2000s, I actually did, for a story, ran Debian on my desktop computer at work for 12 months, 13 months. I did all the work. I was just an editor at that point. I was writing a lot, so it was mostly like word processing and photo editing and stuff like that. I didn't do page layout tasks, so I didn't have to worry about getting InDesign working on Linux. But like, I developed a lot of proficiency with command line stuff and how to change kernels and how to do updates and all of that kind of stuff. And that ended up being really useful for a whole host of tasks as Linux kind of took off, whether it was running like OpenWRT or DDWRT on a router, or blessing hard drives with Linux for TiVos so that you could have a 200-300 hour TiVo instead of a 20-hour TiVo. That was a thing. That was a thing you used to have to do back when PVRs were still a thing.
Ooh, secret.
And then these days I have a couple of Linux machines that work as servers in my house that I mostly interact with on the command line, or I have, web interfaces running to manage things like Docker containers and Minecraft servers and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the vast majority of my life has been Windows. There was a handful of years where I was a diehard Mac person. I switched to that because I went to audio engineering school, and for audio, Mac is definitely the best platform to be on. I still believe
audio.
that. Yeah. And so but for the most part, I've used Windows, and I have dabbled a little bit into Linux here and there, though. Like I had, and my ex-wife's sister's brother actually worked at Ubuntu, and like it
no
like
relation then, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't talked to him in a long time, but and I don't even know if he works there anymore, but he was like, oh yeah, you should check out this Linux thing. So I had an old Windows laptop. This is around 2005 ish that I was like, oh, why don't I wipe the drive and put it on it? So like I kind of messed with it. I didn't really stick with it. I think I went back to Windows after a while. It was just like, oh, okay, well that's kind of cool. I felt naughty. I was doing something crazy, but I didn't stick with it. I've also installed and messed around with Kali Linux. My good buddy Mikey is a certified ethical hacker, and he mainlines Kali and was like, oh, you should try this out. So I'd messed around with it on an old laptop. Once again, didn't really stick with it, just kind of dabbled a little bit. But most recently, I have been deep into handheld land. So Steam Deck and all the other different flavors, which a lot of them are Windows based, but a lot of them are Linux based, like SteamOS. SteamOS is a huge thing. I really want to get into it and understand it and all that kind of stuff. So like I'm not scared to go in there and mess around with Linux, but my biggest worry as a professional and trying to do, mainline Linux is, can I do the things that I need to do for work on Linux rather than just have it like as a gaming machine or just something to tinker around with.
Well, I was going to say, you and I have both spent a lot of time lately, like experimenting with the other Steam Deck kind of Steam OS variants. Like we both spent time with Bazite. We've both spent a little bit of time with Hollow ISO and some of the other things that use that Proton Core and the Steam Deck enhancements that Valve made. So
and I know it's not like exactly Linux, but I have been using Chrome OS a little bit. So whether you want to throw that into the mix, we're all about maybe trying new OSs, right? Opening our horizons kind of thing. Well, so
there's an opportunity because there's something really nice about using a computer where the first thing it does when you install the OS on it isn't, hey man, have you considered subscribing to 3 or 4 services, right?
Hey, yeah, like you want Game Pass, right?
I'm good. It turns out I don't.
What about OneDrive? Microsoft 365.
Look, I already pay for Dropbox. I'm cool on that, man. I don't need OneDrive. And I already pay for Office 365, but you can tell me that I should subscribe to it anyway, and then just give me a button that says, "Oh, we know you already pay for this" at the bottom of that ad. That's probably a fine user experience, I guess. I don't know, man.
It's great. That's great. What are you talking about?
And yeah, of course I want recall. I want the spyware just built into my computer now. That's what I'm looking for. So
all these AI features in these new AI PCs, it's just really, really the future of computing.
What if every interaction I do in my computer could make a bar at Microsoft go up and to the right just a little bit more, so that somebody gets closer to hitting their annual performance reviews?
Perfect.
Look, I think everybody should have great performance reviews, and I'm willing to do my part by using Bing 40 or 50 times a day when I try to open an application from the start menu. It turns out that's not what I'm here for anymore.
That's your favorite thing to do. Well, yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff to get through. I will say, I think there's a couple more things before we wrap it up here. Number one is, okay, so what is next after this? What is our homework after episode 0 as we move into episode 1? I would say we've actually been doing a lot of the homework, and that's figuring out, okay, what kind of distros are out there? What kind of, and what do we want to use? What kind of hardware do we have around that we can use? Which we've both kind of got in that stuff. I don't know if we want to get into it now or save it for the next episode. But yeah, I
think we can get into that. Like so this is part of the reason you do episode 0 is so that your podcast is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the places podcasts are found when you actually launch the first episode. But I think in terms of background, I think we can talk about where we're starting. I put Casio OS on a Lunar Lake laptop a few weeks ago. I've had it off and on my desktop for a while. Casio is an Arch Linux derivative that's kind of built for cutting edge hardware, right? It's like compiled to run on Zen 4 and newer CPUs on the AMD side, and I think it's Raptor Lake and newer on the Intel side. So like,
oh, interesting. Okay,
like it really doesn't work on older hardware. They do things like the NVIDIA drivers are built in, your new graphics drivers are built in. It uses the latest versions of the kernel, so you have a better chance of your brand new hardware working well. But it is an Arch variant, which means it's more complicated. Like often, in my experience so far, at least, like there are versions of Slack and Discord for Debian and for Ubuntu and Red Hat based distros, right? There aren't for Arch based distros, so I have to go do some extra work to make that stuff happen, which has been fine so far. But anyway, we'll talk about that in episode 1 more. But that's where I started, and the laptop stuff, like installing and getting it working on the laptop, went surprisingly well. Like everything kind of just worked out of the box, except for the Windows Hello face recognition camera, and I was able to get that up and working within a few hours. So it's pretty good.
Okay. And yeah, so my journey is a little different because I don't have as much experience. So what I've done was look at the laptops that we have around the PCWorld labs, one of them being a framework, which has historically really good Linux support. And on that system, I want to install myself. I want to install Mint because a lot of people have said, hey, you know what? Mint is very safe for newbies and a little bit more Windows OS like, I guess, you know, for people trying to switch. But not only that, I actually reached out to the fine folks over at System 76, and they sent me a laptop. I think it's the Darter Pro is the name of the model laptop. And they have their own distro called Pop OS that they've installed on it. So like what I do in the day job when we get laptops in for review, I was like, that's kind of the closest analogy for me is like, okay, send me a laptop. You've got your OS already installed on it. What is it like to just take it out of the box and start using it? Which I haven't, neither of those things I've gone down yet, but that's what I'm going to be doing between episode 1 or episode 0 and episode 1 is to start to do that. So I've got the hardware, but I've yet to actually go through the process of setting it up on those laptops.
So I think our homework for this episode then is, get a machine working that you're using as your main laptop, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm kind of curious. I'm going to pay attention to how often I end up rebooting into Windows to do stuff. I think that's an interesting metric.
Should you have like a counter? Maybe just a little chalkboard that you.
I can get one of those clicky things.
Oh the little clicker thing.
People love clicky things on podcasts.
Exactly. That actually might be kind of funny to have a counter of like, okay, I switched. I switched my boot device this many times this week. And maybe the counter will go one way or the other over the weeks. Who knows? That might be kind of fun.
So your part of your homework has to be to install Windows on that System 76 laptop, right?
And the framework. Or actually, no, okay. I think the framework already has Windows installed. So I need to make a partition and install Mint on that. So
generally speaking, the recommendation is that you install Windows first and then put Linux on after that. So I'm interested to see how the System 76 thing works. I'm sure you can just download a Pop OS image from them to do a clean install if you have to, though.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, they've been super nice. I'm still in contact with them, so maybe that's something I need to do is email them and be like, hey, listen, I want to put Windows on it. What do you recommend? What are the steps? Because maybe they have something.
They're going to be like, send it back. Send it back. Send it back.
Send it back. Yeah, you've already ruined the whole experience.
Yeah, you're the enemy now. None of that Redmond swill on this computer.
That's funny. Well, hey, Will. I mean, we're wrapping up here. Where can people find the podcast? What kind of schedule are we going to be on? What are the final details that people need to know?
So we'll have a video version on the Full Nerd YouTube channel where other Full Nerd network of podcasts live, right?
Yep.
We're going to be Deezer exclusive for the audio feed. You got to get it on Deezer or nowhere else. That's my plan. I think Deezer's up and coming, man.
Wait, Deezer's for all the Linux nerds?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
For real. It'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, all the places podcasts are found. Yep. And we'll have links. We'll talk about it on the Full Nerd the week before the episode 1 goes live, as well as if you subscribe to the feed that you got this from, you'll be able to see that as well. So yeah, you'll get it there as well. So
even though we'll have a video version of this, we're mainly going to be focusing on the audio portion of it. And also we're not going to be doing it live. People who are following us from the Full Nerd know that we always like to do that podcast live, but why aren't we doing it live this series?
I mean, honestly, it's just scheduling live stuff is harder. So if you do it live, you have to do it at the same time every week. It's a constant pain. We wanted to make this, and also because we want that interaction loop with the audience to be about one episode to the next. And when you do it live, there's live chat going in that kind of distills that down a little bit more than we maybe want to do. So, and it's worth mentioning, this is going to be a different format than the Full Nerd, right? This is going to be a shorter, tighter show. We're going to shoot for like 45 minutes or an hour. Of course, we can go long if we have a topic that demands it. If we get a really great guest and we want to talk for a long time, that's always viable. But for the most part, you should expect these to be like, maybe 1 or 2 drives of your commute instead of 3 or 4. So
yes, catch up on all the Linux talk. So what happens next is that, I mean, by the time we put this episode up, you should obviously, be able to subscribe to some sort of feed, follow us. Like I said, we're going to announce it on the Full Nerd. Maybe episode 0 is too early to leave a review.
No, if you like it,
how do you know?
Episode 0 is the perfect time. If you think this is a bad idea, maybe wait a few episodes, see what you think after that.
Perfect. And definitely get at us either in the comments. I guess I didn't do my homework before episode 0, but yes, we should set up an email address so that people can email in if they don't feel like commenting on one of our various things. Also, we do have a Full Nerd Discord. I will leave that in the description because we have a Linux channel now in that Discord channel. Or
it's lively.
I think what do they call?
It's a channel. Yeah.
Is it a channel? Okay. Yeah. So it's brand new. I've already had some great discussions of stuff in there, and it is a mix like us where people who are either trying it out for the first time or they are longtime Linux people. And so far, no judgment. A lot of help. Everyone's been super cool. So that's also another good place to speak with people in real time.
And then we should probably also make a channel for feedback on these episodes would be my guess too. But we can figure that out in the future. We'll see if it needs it.
Yeah.
So that's
Linux,
it.
2025, the year of Linux.
I'm
here.
excited.
We're doing it. I am actually genuine. I'm scared, but I'm genuinely excited.
It's fun to learn new stuff. It turns out, even like I said, even if we end up both bouncing back to Windows at the end of this, we'll have learned stuff that's useful for like home server stuff and for handhelds and all the other places that Linux shows up in your life. So hopefully you'll come along with us. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you listening this far, and hope you enjoy episode 1 when it pops up in your feed shortly after this is out.
Boom! That's episode 0 of Dual Boot Diaries. Check back next week for the adventure of Linux, or of us trying it, I guess.
Linux.